The Philippine Navy is setting up a monitoring station at the Tubbataha Reefs through the Sulu Sea.
At first glance, the Sulu Sea looks like just another stretch of blue on the map, quiet, remote, and far from global headlines. But look closer, and the picture changes fast. Beneath the surface is a complex system shaped by geography, policy decisions, and everyday economic realities. What moves across these waters isn't just boats or fuel. It's incentives, gaps, and consequences. To understand what's really happening here, you don't start with crime or conflict. You start with numbers, borders, and the way systems interact once they leave dry land. Because in the Sulu Sea, the line between legal and illegal, formal and informal, isn't always clear. And that ambiguity is where the story begins. In Malaysia's Sabah state, fishermen can legally buy subsidized diesel for about 2.10 ringgit a liter, roughly 53 cents in US dollars. It's cheap by design. Now cross the Sulu Sea. In the southern Philippines, that same liter of fuel sells for around 50 pesos, or about 85 cents. That's a 32-cent difference on every single liter. On land, that gap barely matters. At sea, it changes everything. Fuel moves in bulk. Demand never stops. And once you leave the shoreline, oversight drops off fast. In that environment, even a small price gap becomes real money. This isn't theft driven by desperation. It's arbitrage created by policy. The fuel doesn't get refined. It doesn't get altered. It simply crosses water. Distance, borders, and mismatched prices do the rest. And fuel has three qualities that make it perfect for this kind of trade. It stores easily, it's hard to trace, and it's essential to daily life. Small profits, repeated over and over, add up fast. This price gap is the engine. Everything else, the boats, the routes, the informal networks, exists because of it. The Sulu Sea's smuggling economy doesn't start with criminals or ideology. It starts with numbers that don't line up across borders. Once the incentive is clear, the next question is scale. How big is this trade really? According to Malaysian authorities, Marine Police seized last year alone about 90,000 liters of petrol and nearly 1 million liters of diesel. The estimated value? 88 million ringgit, around 22 million US dollars. That number matters, but not for the reason you might think. These figures don't represent the total trade. They represent what got caught. Seizures tell us three critical things. First, this isn't small-time smuggling. Moving close to 1 million liters of diesel takes planning, storage, boats, and coordination. This is organized activity, not opportunistic crime. Second, it's persistent. Authorities report dozens of cases. These aren't one-offs, they're patterns. And third, and most important, interceptions only capture a fraction of what's actually moving. In maritime smuggling, seizures are a lagging indicator. They show activity, not control. If this much fuel is being seized, far more is getting through. Quietly, regularly, profitably. In fact, the size of the seizures doesn't prove enforcement is winning. It suggests the operation has already gone industrial. To understand why it keeps going, you have to look at the water itself. Sabah's eastern coastline sits less than 120 kilometers from the southern Philippine Islands. At its narrowest point, near the Semporna island chain, that distance shrinks to just 18 kilometers. That's not a barrier. That's a short boat ride. The Sulu Sea is packed with small islands, shallow channels, and tight straits. Fishing routes have crisscrossed these waters for generations. For local fishermen, this terrain is second nature. For law enforcement, it's a maze. Large patrol ships struggle here. Radar coverage breaks down. Small boats move fast, vanish easily, and blend into legitimate traffic without effort. The geography favors speed over surveillance, local knowledge over state authority, informality over regulation. In effect, the sea itself works against enforcement, and that's the key point. The Sulu Sea isn't hard to police because governments are weak. It's hard to police because the geography is stronger. On a map, the maritime boundary between Malaysia and the Philippines looks clean and clear. Out on the water, it almost never is. The Sulu Sea isn't governed by a single authority. It's a patchwork, overlapping patrol zones, fuzzy boundaries, and enforcement agencies sharing the same waters but rarely the same playbook. Coordination is thin, information moves slowly, and those gaps matter because smugglers understand the gaps better than the states do. Fuel can cross from one jurisdiction to another in minutes. Legal responsibility takes far longer, caught up in radio calls, paperwork, and handoffs between agencies. Malaysian authorities have pointed to fuel storage sites on small islands near the maritime border. These places sit squarely in a regulatory gray zone. Storage limits aren't clearly defined. Inspections are infrequent. Oversight varies from island to island. Once fuel is staged there, tracking it becomes exponentially harder. The result is a border that exists on paper but fades the farther you move from shore. Out at sea, sovereignty weakens with distance, and gray zone actors operate exactly where that authority thins out. What makes this case different from routine smuggling is how openly officials talk about it. This isn't speculation. Authorities aren't guessing how the system works, they're explaining it. Malaysia's Agriculture and Food Security Minister, Mohammed Sabu, has openly acknowledged that fishermen are allowed to buy their full subsidized fuel quotas even when they don't actually need all of it. That unused fuel doesn't disappear. It gets resold, not stolen, not siphoned, simply redirected into the black market. That distinction is critical. It shows the problem isn't a lack of enforcement, it's a flaw in policy design. Sabah's Regional Marine Police Commander, Ahmad Amri Abdul Rahman, has reinforced the same point, noting that enforcement becomes especially difficult in areas crowded with small islands near international borders. Taken together, these statements reveal something important. The state understands how fuel exits the legal system. It knows where the fuel goes, and it knows why stopping the trade is so hard. Yet the structure remains the same. This gray zone economy isn't hidden in the shadows. It operates in plain sight, inside loopholes that are openly acknowledged but left in place. Malaysia introduced fuel subsidies for fishermen back in 2006. The goal was straightforward: protect livelihoods from rising fuel costs and keep coastal communities viable. On paper, it worked. Fishermen got reliable access to cheap diesel, operating costs dropped, income became more predictable. But in the Sulu Sea, the subsidy didn't stay national. It became portable value. Once fuel is subsidized at the point of sale, it stops being just an input. It turns into a tradable asset. A liter of diesel bought legally in Sabah instantly gains value the moment it enters a different pricing system across the water. No law is broken at the purchase counter. The distortion only appears once the fuel starts moving. That's how a welfare policy quietly slides into a gray zone economy. Legal purchase, informal transfer, cross-border resale, all of it enabled by geography and uneven prices. Subsidies work inside borders, markets don't respect them, and smuggling doesn't survive on supply alone. It survives because there's demand on the other side. In the southern Philippines, fuel prices are consistently higher than in Sabah. Diesel sells for around 50 pesos per liter, roughly 85 cents US. For coastal communities and small operators, fuel isn't optional. It powers fishing boats, small transport vessels, generators in off-grid villages. And as long as that demand exists and the price gap remains, the trade keeps moving. But fuel doesn't flow evenly across the region. Infrastructure is thinner, supply chains are longer, and the farther you move from major ports, the lighter the state's footprint becomes. That's where smuggled fuel steps in. It arrives by boat, it's sold locally, and more often than not, it's cheaper, or simply easier to get, than official supplies. And this is the critical point. For many coastal communities, the black market isn't a convenience. It's the most reliable energy system they have. Smuggled fuel survives not because demand is criminal, but because access is structural. When governments respond, the instinct is almost always the same. Increase patrols, make more seizures, put more boats on the water. And to be fair, enforcement hasn't been absent in the Sulu Sea. Fuel has been seized. Smuggling runs have been disrupted. Networks have been broken, at least temporarily. But the trade keeps coming back. That's because enforcement focuses on movement, not motivation. As long as fuel in Sabah stays subsidized, fuel in the southern Philippines stays more expensive, and maritime borders stay porous, the incentives don't change. Every seizure removes a shipment. It doesn't remove the reason that shipment existed. In some cases, crackdowns even boost profits. Higher risk makes successful runs more valuable. Without changes to subsidy design, quota controls, and real regional coordination, patrols become repetitive and reactive. The takeaway is simple. You can intercept boats, but you can't patrol away a price gap. What's happening in the Sulu Sea isn't just smuggling. It's a working gray zone system. Gray zones live between war and peace, legality and illegality, state control and state absence. They're low-profile, economically rational, politically deniable, and easy to ignore. Fuel smuggling in the Sulu Sea fits that model almost perfectly. No flags are raised, borders aren't openly challenged, there's no military showdown, and yet state authority slowly erodes. The same routes used to move subsidized diesel can, and often do, carry weapons, narcotics, and people. Fuel just happens to be the most visible and least controversial cargo. That's what makes it dangerous. Gray zone economies normalize cross-border illegality without forcing governments into dramatic responses. They survive because they stay below the crisis line. The Sulu Sea isn't unstable because of open conflict. It's unstable because informal systems are working better than formal ones. So why does this keep happening year after year, seizure after seizure? Because nothing at the core has changed. Fuel in Sabah is still subsidized. Fuel in the southern Philippines is still more expensive. And the Sulu Sea is still what it's always been. A maze of islands, short crossings, and weak coordination. This isn't a failure of patrol boats. It's a mismatch between policy, geography, and regional integration. As long as price gaps move faster than regulation, gray zone actors will keep winning. The lesson is straightforward. Smuggling in the Sulu Sea isn't an exception. It's a rational response to the system as it exists. Until subsidies are reworked, borders are managed together, and outlying communities are truly brought into the economic system, enforcement will keep playing catch-up, and the gray zone will stay alive. The Sulu Sea doesn't reward chaos or recklessness. It rewards whoever understands the reality on the water and builds around it. What the Sulu Sea ultimately shows us is not a failure of rules, but a mismatch between policy, geography, and lived reality. When economic incentives move faster than regulation, informal systems naturally fill the space. That doesn't make them invisible, and it doesn't make them accidental. Understanding these dynamics matters because solutions don't begin with more patrols alone. They begin with better aligned policies, regional cooperation, and economic access that reaches beyond major ports and capitals. The challenge isn't simply stopping movement across the sea. It's reshaping the conditions that make that movement logical in the first place. Seen this way, the Sulu Sea becomes less a story about smuggling and more a case study in how borders, markets, and governance interact. And that makes it not just a regional issue, but a lesson with relevance far beyond these waters.